Oh, I don't see Lisa.
You don't see me.
Oh, hi, Lisa.
Hey, Melanie, how you doing?
Oh, good.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
and we are now streaming. And I'm just going
Great.
to promote a couple more people, and we'll see if Nathan joins.
Hey, Jessica.
Hey there.
Well, great. At this point, I will kick off our meeting. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the August 1st Art and Public Places Committee meeting. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E and the recommendation of the Health Officer of Sonoma County, Art and Public Places Committee members will be participating via Zoom webinar. Members of the public can participate in the meeting via Zoom, and I will ask our recording secretary to give more information about how members of the public can participate.
So members of the public can participate if participating via Zoom by using the raised hand feature. If you are calling in, please press *9 and you will be prompted to unmute your phone, and you'll be able to share your comments with the committee. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And if we can take a roll call for all committee members on our meeting. Thanks.
Absolutely. Member Sayers. We can't hear you. If you could just unmute for me, please.
Right there.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you so much. Member Puentes.
I'm here.
Thanks. Vice Chair Jones-Carter.
Here.
Chair Kiefer.
Present.
Let the record reflect that the members are present with the exception of Member Edsterian, Baumgartner, and Nathanson.
All right. I would next like to move to public comment. This is a time when any person may address matters not listed on the agenda, but are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. Public may comment on agenda items when that item is called. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Eileen, at this moment, do we have any public comments for our meeting today?
We do not. We have no voicemails, emails, nor are there any hands raised at this time.
Great. Next, I will move to item 4, approval of minutes. We have all committee members should have received meeting minutes for the June 6, 2022 meeting. I'm looking for a motion to accept these meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I like to motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Great, thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll
You have to
second.
be Bob because I wasn't there.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, now move.
Chair Kiefer, because we have to have at least half of the members of the committee voting, we don't have enough individuals at this point who are present. I believe, oh, actually, Nathan has just joined us, so I apologize. Please go proceed.
Hi, Nathan. Great time for you joining us. We are currently reviewing the meeting minutes for the June 6th, 2022 meeting. We have a motion on the table to approve the meeting minutes as submitted. And oh, you're currently on mute, but
I'll second that motion.
great.
Well, sorry to
Oh, we already
interrupt.
have a second.
We already have a second. Yeah, we just need a vote. Thank you.
Okay, so I will go ahead and take the roll. I apologize for the confusion. Member Asdirian. Yes, if you could just unmute yourself for a second and let us know if you, and you're voting in the affirmative to pass the minutes as submitted?
I do.
Okay, great. And Member Puentes?
Yes.
Perfect, thanks. Vice Chair Jones-Carter?
I wasn't there.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
That's
But
okay.
Melanie, you would abstain is the proper
I
term.
abstain.
Thanks.
Great. And Member Sayers?
Yes.
Chair Kiefer?
Yes.
The item passes with 4 ayes.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to our scheduled items, item number 5 on the agenda. Before we kick off this item, I would just like to remind committee members that when we do ask for a motion on the table, it is a starting point for a discussion, for a conversation. So it is really useful opportunity for committee members to speak openly about concerns and discussion of why we are voting in a certain way. Just want to preface our next discussion with that little caveat. So item 5.1, we are returning to our annual work plan discussion. This is part 3 in our discussion, and Tara Thompson is going to continue our discussion about the annual work plan process and present a proposed work plan for the fiscal year. Our recommended action is to approve. Again, this is a recommended action. This is just a starting point. So I would like us to have a healthy discussion about if we have any concerns before adopting or before moving forward. This is not a direction, or sorry, necessarily that we need to follow this recommendation. It is an opening. So just a procedural item. That's how we need to have our discussion kicked off. So thanks, everyone. I will turn it over to Tara.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. Chair Kiefer of the committee. I'll go ahead and share my screen to lead us through this conversation, which is a continuation of the 2 other conversations we've had about our annual work planning process. Can everyone see the screen? Okay. So just to refresh your memory and to provide a little bit of an update as well. Sorry, hold on, let me make my screen not so insanely large. Oops, did that just take it out of, did it take it out of the slideshow mode?
It took it out of presentation mode, yes.
Okay, I'll go back then. Okay, so this is the same kind of implementation status or progress report of our current year, or I should say our last year. When I presented this previously, we were still in the fiscal year 21-22. And so now that fiscal year has ended as of June 30th, I have updated the to-date dollar amounts on how we progressed through implementing our first full year of our strategic plan. So the update to this document since last time just has slightly different to-date amounts for some of the items, because this is now, the full fiscal year has concluded. So again, this was a kind of a tool to use in looking at how far we've gotten in implementing our current strategic plan, in how our implementation plan called for us to proceed with that. And it was slow going. We definitely did not get through everything, but we made a lot of progress in a lot of areas. And so there are some notes there, as well as to date amounts that we have spent on some of these strategies or tactics. I'll just keep moving through. Happy to answer any questions though as they come up. So go ahead and just raise your hand if there's something that you'd like to chime in with. And again, refresher that this is the kind of hand-drawn work areas, work map that we made up to show the different areas, not only of the public art program, but also the other areas that kind of fall under the arts and culture manager's oversight. So we have event permitting as well as the Out There Santa Rosa program. No other changes have been made since I last shared this. Again, a refresher showing our last 4 years of public art contributions, our revenue and expenditures, and our fund balance. So no changes to this since the last report. And then this is a new slide that I want to spend most of our time talking about today, in addition to looking at the proposed annual work plan for this new year. While going through this process, I found it helpful to start thinking about the two entities that are really at play here and then how we overlap in our work together. The Public Art Program and Art and Public Places Committee are really two separate entities in that the program has certain roles and responsibilities and Art and Public Places Committee has certain roles and responsibilities. And during the process of trying to figure out where it makes the most sense for committees to be more involved and take over certain parts of our strategic plan, certain parts of the work plan in general, it just kind of felt helpful to create a diagram that visually showed where things live and where the collaborations happen and where the kind of responsibilities lie and then where we share responsibilities. So under the Public Art Program, we have in general public art projects. This includes the management of them, partnerships related to them, and the maintenance and conservation of them. But there are collection projects, meaning public art projects that the committee has a role in approving, that we've commissioned, that the committee has commissioned. But it also includes non-collection things. So placemaking things, partnership things, things that have to do with Out There Santa Rosa potentially that, or just have separate funding that really don't come through Art and Public Places Committee. But those are still considered public art projects. Then we have the private development requirements. That's the 1% for art. The Public Art Program manages that. Our ordinance specifically says that developers can come to Art and Public Places Committee for input, but it is not required. And then we have cultural events like Live at Juilliard. We have our rotating exhibits at our community centers. We have the preparation of our budget. We have the website, social media, PR and marketing related to the program. Out There Santa Rosa is now a component of the program. And then we have policy involvement, such as general plan update and other policy related things that are kind of interdepartmental. In the kind of Art and Public Places Committee sphere, we have community engagement as its own broad category, talking about the formation of an advisory board, partnerships, the better use of existing communication tools, presence at community events. Policies and procedures, meaning the committee is responsible for reviewing, revising, and recommending policies and procedures as they relate to the public art program. Policy development, project development, which includes an audit of our current processes and our project considerations, such as what types of things should we be considering when we are starting a new project. And then project selection, the selection criteria, the selection panel and process, and that the Art and Public Places Committee approves those projects. And then we have the collaborative area. The things in purple in the middle are the things that we really work on collaboratively and potentially equally. We have the preparation of this annual work plan. We have community engagement specifically for projects, which is shared amongst the Public Art Program and the committee. and a project evaluation where we're looking back at past projects and evaluating how they went and what can be improved. So that's, there's probably lots of little nuances there where there might be questions or how does it fit in there, but this to me was a start to visually represent the kind of question that kept coming up is where does it make most sense for the committee to be involved in certain aspects of the program and vice versa. So then this leads us to our draft and what is proposed today, our draft annual work plan for this new year, 2022 to 2023. And so this really is a collaborative effort. As you can see, I've added a column here. This is the same format as what we used in our last work plan. However, I've added a couple columns. So the who column, it has the same color scheme as that past diagram to show who is kind of the party for that item in our strategy in this implementation plan. I'm sorry, in this work plan. So blue is the Art and Public Places Committee, orange is the Public Art Program in the who column. And then it captures the same, this first item, item number 1 is the strategic plan implementation. And so it captures the same categories that we saw last year in our work plan. And it has a planned column and a proposed column, meaning that the planned column was what we anticipated and what was in our strategic plan. That's what we anticipated these items costing for this year's implementation. The proposed plan takes into account the fact that we did not get to everything last year that was called for in our implementation plan. And so there are carryover costs essentially. There are also there's also one item where I'm recommending that we don't implement it this year, given all of the other things that we have to do. And so you'll see a 0 in that row. There's a couple asterisks there, really to indicate some notes like let's postpone till next year. Let's hold certain funds for emergency response, as we've seen in the last few years that is needed. And then let's use some funds for a specific project that has come to our attention needing funding. So this is the first part of our strategic of our work plan, which is number 1, strategic plan implementation. There are still other items on our list. Our continuing projects are also a part of our annual work plan. So the continuing projects are the Artists in the General Plan update process partnership, which we're working with the planning team and the Santa Rosa Forward team and Kimzim Creative. We still have Unum and Courthouse Square ongoing. We still have our ongoing maintenance and conservation. The Asawa Panels and Depot Park are still projects that are in some way ongoing or have a completion date that will take us to some date in the fiscal year 22-23. Then we have item number 3, which are our new potential projects. These there's 2 of them right now, and there may be others, but these are the 2 that we are aware of currently, which is the Highway 101 pedestrian overcrossing, and there is a fire station being built in Fountain Grove, which has separate funding. No funding is needed for this, but it will be a project we're being asked to manage as the Public Art Program. So I'm sure there's lots of questions, but I'll just remind you that the recommended action to kick off our discussion will be to approve this annual work plan, but I'm happy to answer any questions or have a discussion about what's being proposed. And I can share my screen again at any point if we need to refer to anything.
Great, thank you, Tara. I would appreciate if you put the slide back up with the the Excel table with the proposed and projected or planned. There we go.
This one?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share a different format of it so we can see it all on one page. So
Great.
stand by for a sec. Okay, is that visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Before we kick off our conversation, could I get a motion on the table to approve the strategic plan and
Well, first, I would recommend if there are any specific questions first. If there are
sorry.
no questions, we can go right into discussion after there's a motion on the table. But if there are questions, we can do that before.
Oh, sorry. Looks like we have a few questions, so we'll go with that first. Hi, Lisa, go ahead.
Yes, I have the question that was regarding the Create Public Art Toolkits, and that one is we have the 0 and the asterisk, so that one is going to be postponed. And exactly what was did we discuss? I know we were discussing it that I can remember, but were we discussing specifically what was included in those toolkits?
We have not identified all the components that would be a part of that project, but the intention is to have a digital online toolkit as well as a printed version that really would help community members and local artists do their own projects in the community. So it would be kind of a step-by-step process on how to do a public art project in your neighborhood, or what resources are there available if you're looking for funding. What permits might you need for a block party where you want to have some kind of art activity? What kind of support and infrastructure can the city provide to encourage these types of things? It would really just be mainly information, but kind of like a one-stop shop to let people know that there's a way that they can do a project on their own. They don't have to wait for us to do it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Tara.
Melanie?
Okay, and so, because I recall that was pretty high on our strategic plan list, is the reason to not try and do it this week because of this year, or next year, because the resources?
Yeah, it's mainly has to do with kind of our staff resources. It's hard exactly to know in what order to implement the recommendations that we have before us. The first year of the strategic plan called for us doing a public art audit, which we are just now starting. And so the idea was that would be completed before we created the public art toolkits. And so if we haven't even completed that yet, then pushing off the toolkits till next year seems the most logical, since that's following the recommendations of the strategic plan. Is that the only way that we could do it? No, but there's a lot of other things that we want to complete this year that were called for last year. And so to make it more possible for our limited team to, our small but mighty team to do all of these things, we have to prioritize.
Okay.
For clarification, is that why the public art audit planned budget number was doubled for the proposed for this year?
Right, because it was anticipated it would take 2 or 3 years to really complete that process. And we anticipated the first year cost would be 25,000, and that would have been spent last year, but it wasn't. And so we also budgeted another 25,000 for this year. So that's where the 50,000 comes from, is those 2 years budgets combined.
Okay.
So I'll just so you don't have to call on me.
Go
So
ahead.
if you're, Tara, you're saying is the public art audit is 2 to 3 years, and then the toolkit wouldn't be completed until after the audit? So are you saying then the
No, sorry, that's not
Okay.
quite right. Yeah. So,
Okay.
I mean, what the strategic plan called for is to do the public art audit in the first full year of our strategic
Mhm.
plan. It called for starting it, I should say.
Right.
It didn't call to complete it. It just said start it, right?
Mhm.
And then we anticipated, I think there's 2 years worth of budgeted. So I think it was thinking it was a 2-year project, $25,000 each year. And then the toolkits was in the second year of our implementation. Not necessarily with any kind of caveat that said do this after the audit is
Mhm.
complete, but it's just more about how many projects we can take on at one time with the staff that we have. That's not to say that we can't, that the plan also recognized the need to outsource more work. So each year we have a line item to continue to work with additional contractors to expand what we're able to do. So that doesn't mean that we can't continue to use that as an approach to get our high priority items completed faster. But it's just, yeah. So if there's a desire to make sure that we're doing public art toolkits this year, this plan can be adjusted to reflect that. It's just a matter of recognizing that there are some limitations with how much we can take on in 1 year.
Right. I know. I just remember that, we had a lot of discussion about the ease of the application process and all that stuff, and it was really tied to the toolkit. So it seemed like something that was a high priority for the community. So I would like to see it, not taken off the table completely. At least put the money there, and if it doesn't happen, we can address that. But
Okay.
I'd hate to see it gone altogether.
Yeah, understood. I think that's totally other approach, because as we know, this is a work plan. It is something we're going to strive towards. But as we saw for this year, we can see what that you can't, it was ambitious. It's a nice way to say it. And that we may have things that roll over year to year.
And maybe it's, sorry, I'm just talking. So maybe it's, we just outsource it, but we take some funds from something else to try and bolster that line item to get it completed. We have $50,000 for the grants for art organizations, and we're holding it for emergency response funds. Maybe we take some of that money and put it into that category. So that we can at least get started on it.
Yeah.
Because it just reminded me when we did the mural, and there were these groups there, and they didn't even know about our organization and how to get a grant, and that's a first step.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the things that also touch on what you're saying are still on our radar, and we're still working towards in other ways. So for instance, I think the committee can begin, I think it's the project development task force that has on their kind of to-do list, so to speak, an audit of our existing processes for projects, and how artists apply and what our process is, so that we can better understand where the roadblocks are for artists, and how we can improve our process, and then how we can streamline and create a kind of quick, well, maybe you don't need all of the permits you think you need, or maybe you don't need the approvals you think you need, and then that information would actually go into the toolkit. So some of the information we need to do to create a really functional toolkit is to do some of that internal auditing of our own processes. So that can still be happening. And then I think a lot of the work that we're trying to do to get the word out to the community, to have a better website presence, how we're incorporating the public art program into the Out There Santa Rosa website. All of those things help with the awareness as well. So there's a variety of approaches, I think, to get movement in that area. Lisa, you think you had your hand up?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Tara. I know there's a lot on here and there needs to be a lot of participation and a lot of work and stuff, but I do, agree with Melanie. It's the toolkit is something that is a great conversation starter with a lot of organizations, and it's something to show what is possible. Because the conversation, it's really hard. I have had quite a few conversations on where and how they can go, because it's just this verbal talking back and forth. And when you're working with artists, they are, like myself, I appreciate visual, whether it be a website or whatever it may be. But that's, just to tell someone who doesn't have time, check this out. This is who we are. This is what we are. This is what we are. And here's a list of how we can help, how we can assist. And so that's just my ideas, but I understand where you're coming from too, because we do have, there is a lot on here that is going on and what we're trying to take care of.
Kristen?
Question, looking at the who column, we don't have an assignment for who would be working on this, the public art toolkits. Is that an assumption that it would be a shared responsibility between Art in Public Places and the public art program?
No, I left that off because it was being proposed not to try to accomplish in this next year, so I didn't assign it.
Okay.
I think that it would be shared because I feel like, well, yeah, I think it would be shared. I think that the bulk of the work preparing them would be the public art program's responsibility, but I think that the community engagement aspects to it, sharing it once it's complete, and then the kind of policy and procedural review that needs to happen to go into creating them falls more on the committee.
I would agree with that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? And then we should get a motion on the table to have continued discussion.
I had one other question regarding the doubling of the budget for partnering with OCE. Just a reminder of that acronym would be helpful.
Oh yeah, sorry. That's the Office of Community Engagement. It's a
Okay.
department here within the city. And the reason that it's doubled is we actually have started a partnership program with them that Jessica can share a little bit about during the project updates. But the money wasn't expended last year, so it's rolling over.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Oh,
Looks like Bob.
I don't know where we are and when it would be appropriate, but it seems like there's a overwhelming sense that the public art toolkit is a very important, not only resource, but marketing tool and everything else. How do we bring it up and get it going this year?
Yeah, I hear that. I think that Melanie's suggestion of going ahead and putting a budget there and then trying to find some of the funds we would be using for outsourcing or other line items in this budget get allocated to it so that we can be sure we're hiring some contractors to help us with that. I can also share that our plan was to have it be supported by an internship program. We were hoping to get 1 or 2 interns from Sonoma State this year, and that hasn't materialized yet. So that has also created a little bit of a delay there. That doesn't mean there aren't other ways to do it, but that had been our initial hope. So I think during the discussion, I welcome committee members sharing their thoughts on adding it back into this annual work plan and having that be a priority for us. I mean, that kind of feedback is helpful. So, yep, Melanie.
Does the public art program have a funding line, or is it from where's the money come from?
The public art program, it's the same. It's the same. It's all the same. So the public
Okay.
art program is essentially everything that's on this list. It's just a matter of who in the way that other screen, that other diagram kind of divided up roles and responsibilities. There's no two separate funding sources or budgets. It's all one. It's more about who's responsible.
And refresh me, who's in charge of the public art program?
Me.
That's what I thought. Okay. Okay.
The structure, I guess I could have included a organizational chart, but the structure is that I'm the city's arts and culture manager, so I oversee the public art program as well as all of those other things on that hand-drawn chart. Right? And that there are no other full-time staff for the public art program. It's just me. We have, of course, the wonderful Jessica Rasmussen on this call, who's hired as a contractor to support the program. And we also have a part-time permits assistant as well, who also spends time on Live at Juilliard, Bryce, Dow Williamson. That's our mighty team. We are within the Economic Development Division of the Planning and Economic Development Department. So we have the general oversight and support of our Economic Development Manager, Raisa De La Rosa, and we have team collaborations with Rafael Rivero, who's our economic development specialist, and we have administrative support from our admin secretary and our recording secretary for this meeting, Eileen Cleary. So we have support. We're in a structure that supports us, and we're very grateful for that. But it's a very small program in considering all of the work we want to do.
How do we get more staff?
I don't have an answer for you.
No, I'm serious, because I really am. If we have, a real aggressive agenda for the strategic plan, and we don't have the resources to get it done, how do we make that happen? I mean, because I think Jessica's position came from something a couple of years ago that we voted on. Is that correct?
No, not necessarily. We started including, so we had to change how we budgeted for Jessica's position because she originally was a temp employee when we were in the Rec and Parks Department, and now she's hired as a contractor. So there's just a change in how that's categorized. That was really the only change. So, I mean, we are supported. Our salary is also supported by the Out There Santa Rosa, it's SRTBAA funds, because of our oversight over that program as well. But yeah, I mean, I think to make the case for more funding for staff, it's a hard sell right now. The environment of the city and the overall budget is of kind of conservation and getting back to core services, and we have tried to get more full-time staff positions added to support both the special event position and the arts specialist position as regular employees, and we have not had any luck yet, but we are continuing to push for it.
Okay.
Lisa?
Yes. Hi, Tara. So what can we do to help? Can we, because I'm having conversations, like I'm trying to, as much as I can, to go out and have conversations with people, who we are, what we are. But I really think this toolkit would be great as a conversation, not only as a conversation starter, but something to keep going. And it's something tangible and visual that someone can really examine and see what's possible. And I know I've kind of repeating myself about it, but so, and I'd like to get this done. And I know there's, a lot of there's a lot of hurdles that you need to, jump over and stuff. So I'm just wondering what, as a committee members and stuff, since this is such an important thing that we feel like we need, what can we do to participate to get this going?
I think that the development project development task force, so I think that's Kristen and Nathan, could work, and any other committee members that want to work on this could really help by kickstarting off the review of our current process for projects, to identify where some of our roadblocks are, what could be streamlined, and what could make its way into the final toolkit. That's some of, like I said, the kind of background work or the research and kind of desk research that needs to happen to get us to a stronger place of putting together recommendations or putting together the resources that would go into the toolkit. I also think if there's, kind of ties into some policy review, because if there are things that are called for that need to be adjusted or need to be updated, that then would trigger or need a policy revision, then we would need to start working on policy revisions in order to make those effective, right? So it's like if our policy says we have to do a project one way, but we really want to start doing projects another way, we ultimately will need to make policy changes to make sure that we're reflecting how we really want to do projects.
Okay.
So it's that kind of work that I think is helpful to get us headed in the direction of the toolkits. I think that then it's really a matter of looking at our strategic plan looking at, going back to my screen, looking at the annual plan that's proposed and looking at, okay, how should we reorganize this a little bit? What do you want us to be our highest priorities? How can we kind of, reconcile that with some of the other priorities that we feel are needed? Like, how do we come to a place where we know what the committee's highest priorities are so that we can make sure that those are getting attention? I think that would be most helpful.
Okay, great. And then
Can I
Kristen,
add? Oh, sorry.
Nathan, either one of you, if you could please reach out to me, or I can reach out to either one of you, Kristen. And if you want to delegate anything to me, please. We'll get
Great.
this.
Thank you. Yeah. Jessica, sorry, did you want to add something? And then I'll go to Nathan.
Yeah, I want to just add into the conversation that it seems like the main prerogative of the committee is to really, Lisa, you're talking about conversation starters and community engagement and stuff. And I just want to remember that the toolkits are sort of for a select group of people that really want to do projects. So we can also keep in mind that we really want to do public engagement around our projects that we're already doing. So that's a big part of it too.
So when we bring up this discussion stuff, I should raise my hand. Is there like these toolkits, and for more information, I know there are for organizations and stuff that we're giving, and we're having these conversations with who want to do projects and stuff, but can we also have, instead of me asking right now, this is something that I'll have to bounce back and forth off with some other community members on what's possible, what we can have for these, for just artists and organizations and other individuals and stuff. And instead of talking it on here and going on forever, I think it probably would be smart of just to bouncing it off other members at a different time. So.
Thanks, Lisa. Nathan, sorry. I know your hand was up for a while.
Oh, yeah. I think that I'm not entirely clear on the level of involvement of the city with that Creative Sonoma Art Surround program, but I think that's a very helpful kind of model for creating a forum for artists to make proposals with funding that's already attached where things can, kind of develop fairly quickly. Yeah, I think that's exciting and maybe a template for a way to address some of the concerns that are being raised.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. I think that that's the way I would kind of categorize that project and that partnership or collaboration with Creative Sonoma is not necessarily directly related to the toolkits, but it accomplishes something similar to the toolkits, which is to make projects more accessible and to make funding more accessible to people. And so another way that the Public Art Program and the Art and Public Places Committee can quickly and with less hoops, less red tape attached, fund projects that local artists want to do is to partner with nonprofits, to partner with other agencies that allow us to put out funds and say, you tell us what you want to do, we'll fund it, but it doesn't have to go through all of the red tape or all of the kind of commission process that the Public Art Program usually uses when we're putting out a call for artists. So again, different approach than the toolkits. The toolkits are meant for community members, artists or non-artists, to do art projects in their neighborhood, in their hometown, right? They're meant for people where there isn't necessarily funding coming from the city. There could be, but there isn't necessarily funding, but how you would accomplish something that you want to do. And then funding projects like Art Surround allows us to really tear down some of those restrictions that we have related to when we do a call for artists. So similar goals, different approaches. Yeah. Melanie?
So down here for commissions and grants to artists, the $50,000, is this entire $50,000 earmarked for the Highway 101 overcrossing project?
That's what is being kind of recommended in this work plan, since we have been asked to fund part of that project. But that is not something that's been approved. There's been no action taken on that yet.
Okay, because did we get to participate in that? I remember we saw the drawing, but I thought, we were like, we didn't have any say-so in anything. So
well,
are we giving them our money? I'm sorry.
No, the status of that would be, the situation there is that there's a desire from the community to have art incorporated into that bridge. The bridge design is complete. So there were locations identified as possible sites for art on that bridge. And so at the committee's kind of approval, which I think everyone was supportive of when it was discussed back in April, was that if the committee's approving, we would move forward with doing a call for artists to get art projects incorporated into the bridge, but it needs funding. So the next step was really to look at this annual work plan to say, where could we get, how could we allocate funds in our work plan towards this project? And so that was a solution, was to dedicate those funds that were called for other projects to that project. Those are great questions and great conversations. So thank you, everybody. I think at this point, if there's no other questions, then just getting a motion on the table. And if someone wants to make a motion that incorporates any changes you want to see, that's also an opportunity. You don't have to just straight up make the motion that's recommended.
Before we go to making a motion, I would like to ask if there were any public comments received for this item. Eileen, do we have any?
I apologize. I was on mute. We have no public comments for this item.
Great, thank you. Melanie, did you?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the strategic plan with revision to the art toolkits, funding that for this year, and looking at the amount of money that we set aside for the Highway 101 overcrossing project.
So just to clarify, you said strategic plan. I know you meant a work plan because I say the
Sorry.
same thing interchangeably.
No, it just says here strategic plan implementation. So sorry,
I know, no,
my
that's okay.
reference.
The
Okay.
whole work, the whole work plan,
Yes.
yeah, is what you're referring to. And so to add the funding for the toolkits in 22-23 in this year, and then to look at the funds, what do you mean by? We just want to clarify what you mean by
we're gonna increase the art toolkits line item. Where's the money gonna come from?
Got it. I understand. So essentially the toolkits can be funded. So if you look at our other, hold on a second, let me get my, let me share my screen again. Go back to my, sorry, hold on one second. So this slide shows our fund balance essentially. So we have adequate balance to essentially add things to this year's budget if we want. We don't necessarily
Okay.
need to take away from anywhere. It's just more a matter of prioritizing where we want to spend our limited staff time.
Okay. All right.
And in addition, Tara, we can look at some SRTBI funds that align with it and would serve dual purposes.
Right. Yeah, we have flexibility there. So I wouldn't, that's not the constraint, you know, it's like the constraint really is how much we can get done in a year. So it's like, okay, we know we need to hire more consultants, more contractors to help us implement these projects. Then we need to beef up that budget for outsourced work. You know, it's like, what do we need to do to make it so that we can actually implement the items? Finding the funding for it right now, given the fact that we have a healthy fund balance and we have access to the tourism funds, puts us in a good position in that way.
Okay. All right, then I'm amending my motion to approve the work plan and increase the budget for the public art toolkits.
Great.
Can we also increase the budget for existing temp project managers and contractors there?
We could.
Okay. That's my motion.
Is there, just to get more specific, is there an amount that you would feel comfortable increasing the budget for existing temp managers and contractors?
How much did we spend of this 78,000 last year?
Let me get that open. Hold on a second. We had 63,100 budgeted last year. We spent 44,250. But the reason for that, we probably would have spent all of it, except that we lost David mid-year. Do you remember our project manager, David?
Yeah.
So that changed our staffing structure a little bit.
So what if we add David back in there? What does that take us to?
I don't know, because David's not available. So
Oh, no, I just meant the
No, I know,
not
but
him, but the
it would mean re-looking at how we would hire another contractor. So essentially, I would say if we are looking at a part-time contractor for project management specifically, we're probably looking at and just that and not anything else. We're probably looking at it probably, I don't know, at least 50 to 60,000 for a year.
that seems reasonable if we want to get something done.
So it sounds like your motion is to add the toolkits back in for this year and increase funding for temp project managers by another 25,000, or like double it essentially.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, I appreciate your motion, and I guess it's up to someone to second that, and then there can be a discussion.
I will second that motion.
Great, thank you. And let's move to a vote.
Discussion first.
Or
if there are
discussion,
any.
sorry. Now
Maybe
that
we
a
had
mo-
it all already. I don't know. Everything said that can be said. I don't know.
I do support the intention to increase the budget for existing temp project managers and on contractors. So I would like to see that line item increased. So I do support that. Thank you.
Nathan?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So that would trigger a hiring search, right, to fill that position?
Yeah, I
Time
mean,
does that allow us in, the fiscal budget for this year, right?
yeah. So the nice thing about our project funds is that they do roll over. They don't disappear if we don't use them up. So essentially, if we start the process of trying to find a contractor who can do additional project management or other types of consulting, like for instance, we found Kimson Creative, Nico Kimson and his team to do some of our projects. If there are additional, if there's additional work that his team wants to take on and we already have a contract with him, we can add funds to his contract. That would save us time. Or we can start a search for project managers who would be able to take on the work that we're looking at. We would essentially put the 50,000 that's being proposed to put in the budget for this year on a contract with somebody, depending on the scope of services that they have. And then that would just last us about a year. But if it goes a little bit into next fiscal year, you know what I mean? It's like it gets attached to the contract that started now. And then we see how long that lasts.
And that consultant would be tasked with realizing, these community engagement packets.
Well, I think that they essentially, yes, but they would be working on our team. So the way that we often work with consultants or contractors, Jessica's really embedded in our team like a regular employee would be. Our work with Kimson Creative is slightly different, where we really are an outside contractor. We're working very closely with them to get the projects done that we've hired them to do, but different relationship. And there's probably a variety of places in between those things, different types of relationships there. So it depends on kind of who's doing the work and what that situation is like. But I would imagine that both Jessica and I would be working very closely with them, as well as getting input from the committee on the development of the toolkits. So there would be additional collaborative opportunities there to make sure that they're doing it within the context of our public art program and not kind of outside in a vacuum.
Thank you.
I have a question. The continuing projects, is there line items for that as well, or where does that go?
Yeah, the reason there's no budget associated with those is because they were already budgeted in previous years, or they don't need additional budget. So it's like, for instance, the fire station is just our staff time to manage. It doesn't require any funding from the Public Art Fund.
So we don't anticipate any bigger projects next year then?
Outside of the Highway 101 overcrossing.
Right, yeah, the Highway 101 overcrossing and the fire station would be the two large physical installation projects that we would be working on.
In terms of the meeting costs associated with build stronger relationships with the community organizations. I know that's only $1,000 in our proposed budget. Would that proposed budget include things that we could borrow from existing? I guess whoever we're trying to organize a meeting with, in terms of, are we talking about getting new pop-up tents or new tables? Is that kind of like a catch-all for that category?
Yes, we are. I mean, what I think is imagined under that line item exactly are things like if we're hosting an open house, for instance, we would be either paying a facility fee depending on where it was being held, or potentially food for cost for refreshments, printing of materials, those types. It was more thought of as those types of things. We are working on getting a branded pop-up tent and tablecloth for event presence. And so I guess that those two line items together that are in the yellow there are closely related and include those types of items.
So I would suggest maybe blending those two or putting them into one category. And I mean, if they are related costs, I'm not sure if they need to be two line items separately. And maybe allocating $500 from that into another pot if we are concerned about balancing this budget as it currently is proposed. But it's very helpful information to know that how the money, if it's not used in this fiscal year, that it can be carried over to the following year. So that is very good information to know.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a need to or a concern about balancing the budget, so to speak. It's more just prioritizing. And so right now, if the motion on the table is to increase the toolkits to 10,000, that would add $10,000 to the proposed work plan expenditure plan. And then if we were adding 25,000 outsourcing project managers and contractors, then that that would go up by so essentially the 333 turns into what, 25, 35, 80, no, 63. That anyway, it goes up. Sorry, I am so not good at doing math on the spot. But that's what we would be looking at, and there's not really a need to move funds from one line item to another.
Great. Well, I think this has been a fruitful conversation for talking about priorities. I would like to see some movement for some funds dedicated to the public art toolkits. So I'm glad that attention has been given to that today in our conversation. Were there any other committee members who wanted to weigh in on this conversation before we vote?
No, I made the motion to increase those other items, but I'm also feeling like, I mean, I know that we put $50,000 for emergency response funds, but it just seems like there should be a project something else that we're working on, or some other opportunity out there for bringing more art to the city.
So do you think that's enough in terms of that allocation, or are you concerned that that's too much money to be putting aside for future
well, maybe not enough, because I don't know what emergency response funds means. Like when there was a fire and we came up, we said we needed to do something. Is that what you're talking about in that?
Yeah,
Something
so
like that?
when we started the process of our strategic planning for the public art plan, it was during COVID. And so we were actually looking at kind of a needs assessment from the community because we're kind of in the middle of a crisis, and it became clear that our community is in the recent years, more oftentimes than not, in some kind of crisis, whether caused by fires or COVID-19 or whatever else comes our way. So when in the aftermath of the 2017 fires, we launched 2 cycles of a program called Fire Response, where we offered small grants to artists responding to the fires and recovery. And then during COVID, we were able to shift and use program funds that were going to go towards other artists commissions. We put them towards the Open and Out program, which commissioned art all down town during the kind of semi-permanent closure of 4th Street. And so that's what so realizing that those things happen and setting aside a certain amount in our budget for things like that, should they be needed, is what that's intended to be, so that we're not scrambling to say, oh, well, how do we fund something? It wasn't in our annual plan and we didn't approve it. So how do we fund something if we didn't approve it? So in that way, then it becomes kind of a placeholder for something like that. I will say that, having the Highway 101 project and the fire station project will be 2 big projects where there's new art being created. And then the more kind of smaller projects, we already have committed funds in last year's budget and in this year's budget to continue working with Kim's and Creative. And so one of their projects is to do the art in the general plan update. And so they will be issuing grants through their contract. So it doesn't come directly from us, but it goes through their contract. They will be paying artists to do projects in a variety of communities in support of kind of community engagement efforts for the general plan. So there will be a variety of small projects being funded that way.
Okay.
Thanks for the overview of that line item. That makes a lot more, or it helps me connect the dots a bit more of where that is intended to go as a dog ear. So I like hearing that explanation. Is there any interest in our committee to increase that budget slightly? Since we know that it is unknowns and it's hard to plan for unknowns. I think 50,000 is a good number currently. Just wanted to give opportunity for others to voice concern. Seeing none, I would like to move to a vote. Thanks, guys, for having a conversation with us about where these line items would be going potentially.
Okay, Member Sayers? Member Sayers?
Sorry, yes.
Wonderful. Member Asdirian?
Yes.
Member Puentes?
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter?
Yes.
Chair Kiefer?
Yes, I would like to approve with the additions.
Wonderful. The vote passes unanimously by all members present.
Thank you, everybody.
Great, moving on to item 5.2. We will now receive project updates. Staff present updates on updates on current projects. Thanks, Tara. I'll hand it off to you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to have Jessica start us off with some project updates on the current projects that she's overseen, and then I will add a few at the end. Go ahead, Jessica.
Sure. So first up, we've got Unum. We have had some delays with the artists submitting their budget, the engineering, and the final design. So it's now looking like that will be, the installation will be more like the end of the year. We're also currently working on the text for the plaque for that sculpture and details for the installation. For our 5th Street parking garage mural, we're working on the dedication event. And actually, Melanie is going to give an update a little bit more about that during the committee report. Art Surround is underway. Just to remind everyone, that's the project with Creative Sonoma, and the public art program is an advocate and also a funder. So we've identified 7 artists or artist teams that are going to be funded by the public art program. So Tara and I are currently working on project details with those artists. For our rotating exhibits, we've got 3 new shows coming up at the Finley Center and the Person Senior Wing. Those are all being installed this week. And one of them is actually what we were talking about earlier with the Office of Community Engagement. They're installing a show that is portraits and stories from the Multicultural Roots Project. So I'll send out an email with more of the details so you have all the dates and everything, but we've got the receptions for those are all going to be next Thursday on August 11th from 5 to 7. And those are open to the public. And finally, we've got Live at Juilliard. We're halfway through the concert series. So it's been just a big success so far. People are really happy having that back at the park. And we've got 3 more Sundays to go. And again, I'll send a follow-up email that has the lineup so you can all check it out if you'd like to.
Thanks, Jessica. I'll just add in a few notes about our conservation and maintenance efforts. Right now, just as of actually last week, our conservation team made some final repairs to the Dragon tile mural on the Prince Memorial Greenway. The piece is finally now stabilized. It had been a couple years of being in bad shape due to vandalism and the homeless encampments down on the creek trail. So that's now complete. We are also starting to work on some repairs that actually the artists and the fabricators are overseeing of Wellspring, our new piece. Well, it's 2 years now, 2 years old now in Coffee Park. But the concrete water droplet shapes are showing some unusual cracking. So we're going to have the fabricator come out and make sure that they are doing what needs to be done to keep that piece in good condition. So our conservator is going to oversee that work as well, but the artist is taking care of those repairs for us. And then the Asawa Art Panels, we should have the engineering for the panels and the attachment method to the fountain walls by early next week. We're looking at hopefully getting that on Monday, a week from today. And then a timeline for the rest of the project should be generated this week. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow with the Foundry. Unfortunately, Artworks Foundry, which is doing this work for us, has had extensive closures and delays due to COVID outbreaks, so they've been heavily delayed. And the artist and the general plan update, as I mentioned in our last conversation, we are continuing to collaborate with the Santa Rosa Forward team, and Kimson Creative is now planning and will be implementing and documenting outreach projects targeting youth under 24 years old through art projects, working with local artists at sites in the equity priority communities across Santa Rosa, based on the topics of environmental justice, health, and housing. And these activities will start taking place soon and go through the winter. So that is the update I have for all of those today. And both Jessica and I can answer any questions.
Thank you for the update. Do any committee members have any questions or clarifications for ongoing projects?
Just wanted to say I'm excited to hear about the Asawa fountain and the panels.
Moving along. I hope it's good news next week. Okay, next we have item 6, committee reports. 6.1, we have our ad hoc task force reports and discussions. Is there an update from the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access task force?
Yes, Anne and I do not have an update at this time. During this time, we have during the summer and just been different places and vacationing and whatsoever. But I have been trying as hard as I can just to get the word out about the APPC and having many conversations with as many people as I can. It was everywhere. And, you know, I'm trying to get people excited, and people are glad to hear that we have a whole, you know, just new guideline, a new outlook, and are definitely just what we're offering and what we have is completely different, and trying to be more community involved.
Thanks, Lisa. Community engagement. Melanie, did you have an update or
Yes.
about the dedication ceremony?
Yeah. So the date of the dedication ceremony is going to be Friday, August 19th from 5:30 to 7 downtown by the mural. And we're seeking help from all of you to help with setup and breakdown. Our plan is to have speakers, have the artist talk, have the chair of Art in Public Places say a few words. Oh, yes. Tara's going to be our MC, and we're creating some postcards, which we hope to get in the next few days. And I'd like to have people help me pass them out at the Wednesday night farmers market on the 10th and 17th. You can just email me if you're willing to help with setup, breakdown, whatever you feel like. We'll have light snacks. I'm trying to work on a food truck. It's not confirmed yet. We'll see. Let's see. I think that's about it. Did I forget anything? Okay. Yeah, this is actually our first go round of a kind of a big dedication. So hopefully we'll be doing this more often with more money and, and making it bigger each time we do it. So yeah, but we're excited. And we're going to invite everybody. Oh, 5:30.
I'm sorry, what, 5:30 to what?
7.
Okay.
Yeah. And the street's going to be blocked off. And so we'll be able to mingle around in a safe distance. Distancing safely. Yes. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you for your hard work and your organization to get this going.
We just need to email you, Melanie?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And if I don't hear from you, I'll just email you.
And yeah, maybe it would be helpful to have an email going out initially so that our members who aren't on our meeting today know to reach out to you and the date and time.
Yeah, we'll make sure we send a recap to everyone, and then we'll let them know if they want to volunteer to reach out to you, Melanie.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And
so if you have those, I'm sorry, one more thing. if you have those name tag things, make sure you wear them that day, or if you're going to come and help hand out postcards, wear them or make one up.
Thanks for reminding us. I'll make sure that we have an order in for committee members who don't have them already.
Okay.
Great. For the summer time, I do not have a update from the project development committee. Nathan, is there anything you would like to say? We will reconvene and then connect with everyone on this committee about moving forward with the toolkits and kind of the audit of the current process. So as we see moving forward with that, we'll keep everyone updated. Thank you.
Is Kristen frozen?
Oh, looks like she
Department
froze.
reports, particular
Oh,
item
there she
on
is.
future
Okay,
agenda.
good. Yes, there are no project reports that I have at this time. If Raisa or Jessica have anything, please go ahead. Otherwise, I think we can move on. Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, item 8, we have future agenda items. Time is reserved for discussion, whether to place matters on a future agenda for future discussion. I think today was a very fruitful discussion about our budget and how we want to move forward. I do not have any additional items to add to a future agenda. Does any committee member? Nathan?
Yeah, thanks. I'm kind of curious about Tara's the way that you were talking about sort of third-party nonprofits and how there's the potential to move more quickly on community engaged projects through that mechanism. And I wonder if we might sort of put that on the list as something to consider down the road.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, we can definitely put that on the list to consider for discussion. I think in general, we try to keep that on our minds when we're talking about partnerships and collaborations, knowing that it can be a very helpful way to get projects done faster or to support community-based projects without an extensive process. So it doesn't necessarily need any action to be able to happen. It can already happen, and we try to keep that in mind for when we are planning projects or doing projects. But I think it's worth having it on the list as a kind of a discussion more around like how do we prioritize that in how we work. So I think maybe that's the framing that I would suggest for that.
So there's no need to earmark specific funds in order to facilitate those kinds of partnerships.
Not necessarily, no. We have, I mean, in our outline for our strategic plan and what we just approved for our annual work plan, there's a line item for commissions and grants to art organizations. Okay. That's generally what that means. It's just we may have different uses or it may be prioritized differently depending on what our needs are at the time. So right now, the recommendation in this annual plan is to say, okay, well, let's kind of earmark those for some kind of emergency response or crisis response as needed. But that, there's like, for instance, the way that we partnered with Creative Sonoma and the Metro Chamber of Commerce for Open and Out. That's kind of what an example of that can look like.
Okay, thanks.
Great. That was a good reminder that that can be an ongoing conversation topic as we have our regular meetings. Well, thank you. Do we have any other future agenda items or discussion items? And these, if anything does come up later on in the week or between our meetings, let's email them to Tara and keep our group informed, just so that we can keep moving. Things do not always have to be, I encourage us to keep our energizing thinking going, even when we do not have regular meetings. As a
Thanks.
reminder.
Kristen, I just wanted to add one little thing that I forgot. I should have mentioned it at some point, probably under department reports, but I wanted to share that the committee should expect to receive an email from Nico and his team with Kim's Creative about scheduling special meetings to hold our diversity, equity, inclusion workshops. So his team is planning a series of 4 workshops that will be held during a committee meeting, but they will probably be scheduled as special meetings. So you should receive a survey to fill out with availability for that. And I think
Great.
they're targeting to begin those the second week of August. So hopefully an email will be coming from them soon.
Great. I'll keep my eyes open for that email and we'll respond promptly. Reminder for everyone, the next meeting for the Art and Public Places Committee, scheduled at the beginning of September on Monday the 5th, is canceled due to the Labor Day holiday. We will stay tuned about our next special meeting, if one will take place in September. So thank you, everyone. This is a great meeting. Bye.